6 months ago, I leased this Lucid Air Touring, and honestly, I have had a wonderful time. This is the first EV that I've ever owned, and what really drew me to it was the lease incentives that Lucid is offering on these cars. So I've been dying to make a video updating you all on my 6-month ownership experience. I've done a little less than 2,500 miles in this car, which isn't a ton, but keep in mind, I live in Los Angeles and the majority of that is city driving. I think that this car has a ton of potential. That is the number one thing that I want you to take away from this video. You could stop watching right now, but just know that what Lucid has done here on their first attempt at making a car is insanely impressive. And I want to start by talking about the packaging. When you design a ground up EV like this, you kind of have a blank slate. You can make it whatever you want. And Lucid picked a fairly traditional sedan shape here, but of course, the focus with a car like this is on aerodynamics, and Lucid did a great job. In fact, this is just as aerodynamic as the hideously ugly Mercedes EQS. But what's most impressive about the Lucid Air is they haven't forgotten what makes a luxury car a luxury car. Little details like making sure that the rear doors open a full 90 degrees for easy access. Things like the angle of the seat, the soft closed doors, the peasant blockers on the rear windows, and even having a cutout in the floor on these touring models with smaller batteries to make sure that your legs are in a more comfortable position. These are the types of details that the Lucid engineers really nailed. And take a look at this absolutely cavernous and power-operated frunk here. This thing is huge. You could fit an entire suitcase just up there. And the reason for that is because of Lucid's engineering under the hood, literally. Because Lucid isn't just a technology company, everything in this car was designed from the ground up. The battery and motor technology that Lucid is using is insanely impressive. Their drive unit is just 67 pounds and can fit in a carry-on suitcase, but it can produce 670 horsepower. That is insane. And to build something this small, they had to miniaturize a differential, making it just 1/14 the size of a traditional differential and include that in this unit. And that allowed them to completely rearrange the internals of a luxury car, providing more passenger space in a smaller overall footprint. And these little engineering details add up to a car that feels really well polished. You have a ton of cargo and passenger space, a super rigid chassis, and an interior that feels incredibly rock solid. So clearly this car is extremely impressive and was designed by some very competent people. However, the problem is, if you're going to create a ground up electric vehicle company now, you have to do more than just build a good car. You have to make it self-driving. You have to design an entire software system to run on it. And honestly, the issue now is that startups like Rivian and Lucid just have a lot of catching up to do. Not because they're not good, but because companies like Tesla or even legacy automakers have just had a lot more time. So honestly, most of the issues that I have had with this car in my 6 months with it are software related. When I first got the car, one of the most frustrating things is that when connected to Apple CarPlay, it would just randomly pause the music, and I could not get it to play. Sometimes you'd have to wait like half an hour if you were driving, or I'd have to pull over, get out, wait for it to disconnect, get back in, restart the whole system, and then it would work again. Now, a lot of that has been fixed through software updates, but I still get issues from time to time, like the other day where I was trying to rush over to the airport and CarPlay just completely froze, wouldn't do anything, so I had to resort to using the built-in navigation. Now, if I was in a Tesla and I could only use the built-in navigation, I wouldn't have a problem because the built-in navigation is fine and it works properly. But as I'm like trying to make my way down the highway and talk to the car, I don't have time to type it in, so I'm using voice command. Directions to LAX Terminal 7.
Navigating to LAX Terminal 7. Follow the highway.
Dude, 1 day, 5 hours, 2,000 miles. Why am I going to Mexico? Why would I want to go to Mexico? Who designed this voice control system? Is this 2010? Why do I have to spell everything out exactly? I mean, come on. And I think these are all important considerations to have, because when you look at pretty much any new EV, everybody reviews it from the perspective of, oh, is this the next Tesla killer? Is this gonna be the Tesla killer? Can we please shut the hell up with this Tesla killer nonsense? It's not gonna happen. Nobody is killing Tesla, nor do they want to. Competition is a good thing in the EV space especially. And so when I look at a car like this and I compare it to the Tesla Model S, for example, what I'm looking for is this thing actually competitive? And obviously on a technology level, the batteries, the motors, the design of this car, the build quality, the materials, they've absolutely nailed it. But there are a couple of things that Tesla just does better for now, software being one of those things. And here it's the little details that Lucid is lacking that detract from the experience. One of the most consistently frustrating aspects of driving this car is that they use a Bluetooth car key if you decide to use your phone as a key. And what that means is frequently when I walk up to the car, it can take anywhere from a few seconds to even as much as a minute for my phone to unlock the car. Oftentimes, I have to unlock the phone, walk away, and walk back up to get the car to unlock. And then there's what Lucid calls their Dream Drive system. It had 3 tiers when I bought it back in May. The basic one, which is just called Dream Drive, and then there's Premium and Pro. Now, since I bought the car, Lucid is now offering Dream Drive Premium as standard, and that comes with a whole suite of cameras for 3D visualizations, top-down traffic view, and that sort of thing. But my car doesn't have that, so I have to look at these blank placeholders where cameras should go. And it means that on the highway, I have access to radar-guided cruise control thanks to these sensors on the front of the car, but that system does not control the steering at all. I have no self-driving whatsoever, and it can't be added because I'm missing the hardware. The Tesla Model S is $75,000, and it just comes with everything by default. You don't have to option any of that stuff. And that's really how it should be. But I do want to give Lucid credit here because they've done a lot to improve the software experience on this car. One of the things that was always getting on my nerves were these drive modes. If you wanted to put it into Swift or Smooth, you could just tap it like this, but to go into Sprint, you had to have an additional dialogue and hit confirm. They removed that, and now you can just click into whichever mode you want. Another thing that's always gotten on my nerves is the volume control on the steering wheel. It's this weird up-down switch that doesn't have a very satisfying mechanism. You can press in the center to play and pause, but for controlling the volume, you either have to spam it really fast or you hold it and then it starts to change the volume more quickly. I have never liked this. I would much rather have one of these on the steering wheel, like you would find in most other cars, to be honest. But at some point during the years since I've owned this car, they changed the sensitivity. So when you hit the button up and down, it actually controls the volume to a greater degree. So they know that the issue is there. They're working on it a little bit. And it's kind of interesting to see these little bits and pieces getting addressed here and there. And every once in a while, you'll get a brand new feature. Like in the most recent software update, it added direction controls in the gauge clusters. So when I have CarPlay open, I can see where I'm supposed to go right next to the speedometer. I really like that feature. But I want to talk now about range, because that is one of the foremost things that people will look for when buying an electric car, and the Lucid advertises some pretty good specs here. The dual motor all-wheel drive Lucid Air Touring offers 620 horsepower and an EPA estimated 406 miles of range, although with the wheels that I have, that goes down to 385. And the Tesla Model S is almost identical, but what's really interesting is the battery capacity. Theoretically, this is where you see some of those benefits of efficiency. We get the same amount of range with a smaller battery. But how does it fare in the real world? Because I personally don't take a ton of trips where I'm going to be driving 400 miles all at once. So for me, it comes down to how many miles do I get of day-to-day normal driving? And that's a test that I wanted to do once I had broken in the battery a little bit. So I charged it up to full and set off. Now, the first thing that you'll notice on a completely full battery is, like other EVs, the regenerative braking takes a while to kick in as the battery begins to deplete. But in the Lucid, it takes a particularly long time. I didn't recover full regenerative braking until I had driven more than 40 miles. But over the course of the last week, I tried to get a representative sample of the types of driving that I do on a daily basis. We're talking a mix of city and highway, with highway trips generally being less than 20 miles here in the Los Angeles area. Now, the first couple of trips were mostly highway driving, and I was really impressed to see that I was getting 4 miles per kilowatt hour. That is pretty good. Now, that number did go down as I continued the trip with things like turning on the air conditioning remotely through the app, with leaving it sitting overnight, with driving in stop-start traffic, and let's be honest, doing a couple of launches. But again, my goal here was to create a completely representative test. I did not change anything about the way that I drive the car. This was not an economy run. And by the time I decided to call the test with 23 miles of range indicated, I had traveled 290.9 miles, consuming 82 kilowatt hours at 3.5 miles per kilowatt hour. And it took me more than a week to accumulate that type of miles living where I live. So really, range is not a factor at all with this car. I normally charge to 80%, which gives me easily 200 miles of usable range before I feel the need to plug in again. So I think that Lucid has hit the sweet spot, and all versions of the Lucid Air, whether it's the base model or a fully loaded Sapphire, they really do have plenty of range. And given that lease deals can be had as low as $600 a month for the lower trim versions of the Lucid Air, I only pay $700 a month for mine. This is a really, really good value, and a car that I have absolutely loved to drive. The problem that Lucid has is they started the same way that Tesla did. They made a big sedan that's super fast and very luxurious. But that isn't really what the market is going for right now. It's all about SUVs and the more affordable option. I think that once Lucid gets the Gravity out, and once they work on their Model Y and Model 3 competitor, then things are really going to turn around, because they have the engineering, they have the range, they have the build quality, they have the design. They just need that price point. And I specifically am a perfect example for this, because I only ended up in this Lucid because of the lease incentives that they have. And if you look at Lucid's deliveries right now, they are up dramatically. And it's because of these incentives. Since I bought this car, I went from maybe once or twice a week seeing another Lucid to I now see them in Los Angeles almost every day, because the incentives are really good and it's a very, very strong value. So once they're able to get the costs down and introduce less expensive models, I really think that Lucid is here to stay. Oh my God, and it's listening to me again. Well, underscoring my issues yet again. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. I hope you found it helpful. Make sure to subscribe. I've got a bunch more content planned on the way. I will see you in the next one.
Sorry, I didn't get that.
Of course you didn't. Of course you didn't.